it's not a one-off. Like generally when you're investing in mental health and well-being, it is skills for life. It's skills that you're going to use in and out of business. But I think what you were talking about before, Graham, with, whether it's people, whether they have, a bad attitude and being difficult, or is it mental health? I think the trouble is it's getting a really delicate balance of understanding that actually, yes, sometimes when people are being difficult, it is because of a challenge with mental health. But I think it's also so important that people don't use poor mental health as just a blanket excuse.
Yeah, sure.
Because what happens then, when people are saying, oh, well, it's my mental health, if it's not, actually what that does happen is it really diminishes the significance when someone is genuinely experiencing a challenge with their mental health. And I think that's where a lot of this grey area comes, because we can't necessarily see anxiety or depression on an x-ray like you might for a broken bone. There is still some skepticism around it, because there are people that do use it in a very kind of blasé
Yeah.
way. And that makes it really tricky when people actually do need support, because the reality is everyone is human, and sometimes people do just have a really bad attitude. Sometimes that is the case. So it's how do you get that balance? And I think, at least from a franchisor's point of view, if you know that you've given all of those tools, whether that's training, whether it's on-demand tools, whatever it is, at least if you're giving that, kind of morally and from a business point of view, that you're giving that you're giving that to your network to use. And if they do or don't, that's when it's then up to them, just like you do with other business tools in a franchise.
Perhaps you can't just also bolt it on as an add-on. It's got to
Yeah,
be
that's
built on the
true.
foundation of a solid relationship that's had the foundations put in place from the start.
Yeah, so we call it like creating that psychologically safe culture, where actually it's part of general conversation. When it's asked in a genuine way, not just you're right, but actually, how are things going, and even the priority of when you have those conversations. So I've been a franchisee as well before, and so I know from having those like one-to-one support conversations, it's in what priority order do you ask how things are? Do you ask genuinely how you are before you ask how sales are and what your money goals are? So it's even down to the order of questions in a support conversation is really important.
Back to tiny noticeable things, isn't it, Graham?
It is. It's funny. I mean, just as Jen was talking there, I mean, the other point just to note is it actually should start. This whole process should start in the recruitment phase. This, this for me goes to the heart of the benefit, the value of awarding, and I mean genuinely awarding, not a marketing buzzword awarding a franchise, but genuinely awarding the franchise opportunity to the right people. And as part of that, we've touched on Angela Duckworth and the research that sits behind grit and resilience. Even that, if we think about it, we could start the assessment of grit and resilience right in the recruitment process. And it's not to say that something is right or wrong, but if we flag up in the recruitment process that flows into the kind of tailored, bespoke support that could be provided, there are some people who are probably much more prone to having issues around grit and resilience that we could flag up with a very simple assessment at the front.
This does happen in employment settings. This is why people do assessment days and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. But this goes to the heart of, franchise recruitment done well. And, again, there are so many amazing franchisors, well-intentioned franchisors. But this, for me, comes back to, these are the things, particularly if you're at the beginning of a franchising journey, you're maybe moving from having built a business, a successful business, to deciding on franchising as a growth strategy. so many of these things that we are discussing here, if you don't know what you don't know, you will make all sorts of assumptions about what good franchising is like. And of course, people should be signposted to the British Franchise Association and all of the support networks that are there about responsible, ethical franchising. But for me, this goes to the heart of some of the things that we can really do simply, but in a way that is really powerful, and that will then proactively avoid some of the things that we're talking about happening.
I think it's really important to clarify there as well. I think you're right. Actually doing that kind of asking those questions as part of recruitment is really important, but not to base your decision on whether you would award a franchise. So if someone comes out as having, low grit and resilience, that's not a reason to not award a franchise, because actually resilience is a skill, and like pretty much any skill, can be taught and learned. Sometimes people just aren't resilient because they've never needed to be. Perhaps they've lived a really fortunate life where they've not faced a time where they have to be particularly resilient. So actually it's definitely a skill that can be learned. And
I
often
think all humans are resilient. I think some of us just need more support and maybe can't battle through the wilderness by ourselves, and that's fine.
yeah, and even know that they've got it in them to do that. And so actually, do the assessment, but only from a point of, right, okay, as and when this person is in a challenge, they might actually need us to come in and help a little bit more to identify kind of what characters and coping mechanisms they either already have or need building.
Completely agree.
Do you ever do any sorts of Kolbe assessments, or try to kind of get a real feel for how people process information, for instance?
Is that to me or Graham? Sorry.
Well, either.
Graham, you can go first.
I was just going to say, I think, one of the most important parts of, again, the onboarding process when it comes to franchisees is, some form of perhaps, behavioral assessments, whether that's using DISC profiles or insights profiles or whatever it is.
There's lots of great tools for this.
Yeah, exactly. And to Jen's point, it's not about good or bad. It's just about understanding, so for example, if your person, some of those assessments will include things like how you're likely to behave when under stress. So again, it's not a we shouldn't appoint this. It's about knowing what that individual needs and what they're likely to need in those kind of scenarios. So, there's all sorts of tools there. But again, for me, it starts with the mindset of, if your goal, and I'm not saying every franchisor is like this, but there are some franchisors with a goal which is that we just want to sell as many franchise units as possible, whatever that is. And in my experience, having experienced that right in the beginning,
recipe for a joyless business, I'm afraid.
it is a joyless business, and it is.
There's a lot of crisis management coming, I think.
Yeah. But that's exactly right, Jen. And I was in the firing line of providing the crisis management in the beginning of my franchising career, and when that includes, the real flip side of that, when that includes people either being, physically, mentally impacted by these things, and in the worst case scenarios, losing everything, including the home. That's not where anybody wants to be, and that's not what great franchising is about. So the more we can do up front, the better.